Okay, can you see my screen all right, Liz?
It hadn't come through yet. Yep, there it is.
Okay. I guess I'm good to go.
Yep, enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Reed. I'm a senior BI consultant with PragmaticWorks with a keen interest in big data, more so the analytics behind or as a result of big data. All the tools, everything else are all very cool. You know, Hadoop, all our file structures. There's a lot of very neat things that have happened in the last couple of years. It really matured, I'll say, in the last few years. But for me, it all comes down to the data and what you do with it. Without some sort of analytics, it's a huge expense for most people. So anyway, I'm encouraging people to, I'm a pretty hardcore database developer, a lot of time in ops. Been studying analytics for the last almost year now, and I'm encouraging everybody that's involved with data to take a step forward and make a little bit of a plunge. Now that tools are so easy to come by, they're inexpensive, they're very powerful, and finally, because of all the big data hype, there's a lot of business owners that are thinking about it that hadn't looked at it previously. Most of them thinking it was either unnecessary or too expensive. So here I am, and let's talk about visualization. So if you watched my last webinar, I did a little work on did one on Azure machine learning, and we wound up, let me pull this up here, we wound up over here in the experiments. Comment I got, there were people that said, well, I focused too much on this one particular model, which was true. I chose it because it was a linear regression model, and it's actually one of the more simple models, but it was really, the discussion is really more about understanding how these models are used and understanding something about how to build a workflow in Azure machine learning. So today, we're going to take a little further. Last week, I ran this model and I got some output. I have since saved those outputs, and as here, my flight data output, we used a linear regression and a random forest model, basically predicting, creating a model that you can pass a set of data into a line of data, a number of variables, and it will predict whether your flight's, what the probability is of your flight being late. So there's little in Azure really to do visualizations. I think that's probably deliberate on Microsoft's part. They've got a pretty strong set of tools. Everybody's familiar with SSRS. Everybody's familiar with Performance Point, which is even a little nicer and a little more formatable. For a lot of what we'll be doing, or what I would expect a data analyst or data scientist would be doing, a lot of it is really experiment-based. And this, truly, these are experiments. We're going to try something, we're going to see what it looks like, we're going to do some visualization, show it to people, and see what they think. So what I've done, there's a couple ways to deal with this data. It's right now sitting over here in the Azure Machine Learning console, and you can't really get it out of here unless you go and push it out. You can download, but it downloads as a proprietary data structure. So what you can do is drag the data over, drag the file over, and then add a writer to it. Data input output, a writer, hook it up, and configure it, which is what I did here. So I'm actually going to push this over to an Azure storage blob that I have, which looks like it's sitting over here. These are all my Azure items. So I have my machine learning environment, a couple of storage accounts, and within these storage accounts I have containers, and within the containers within the containers, I have the actual storage. So I'm going to push this, this information, these files from the machine learning environment over to the storage blob, and then I'm going to go to Excel, and we'll start here. Now you can't, with Power Pivot, you can't reach in there, but you can with Power Query. It allows you to actually hook up to most of the actually almost anywhere. So from here, other sources, data, if anybody's familiar with that, that gets you into a lot of websites and web services, HDFS. You can certainly pull data directly out of Azure's marketplace if you want to get it directly from there. In my case, I'm looking at just a blob storage, so click on that, enter your storage account name, and it'll ask for the key so you can get in. There's a secure key that you have to have or you won't be able to connect to it. Anyway, from Power Query, you can reach into almost anything and do actually some pretty cool stuff. So what I've done so far is I've built a get this other one up here. Via Power Query, I pulled my flight delay data out. So this is all actually what they call the scored data. So this is the data that it's determined whether it's on time or late. This column here is 0 if it's on time, 1 if it's late. So I exported that and brought it into Power Pivot. I also went out, and I've talked about this quite a bit, about augmenting your data. So how do you, if I just bring flight data in and give it to you in a chart, it's going to look very much like this, and it's not going to mean much to anybody other than, okay, you know, how do we see it? How do we look at it? How do I understand it in a hurry? And that's really what all of our reporting is about. So in typical, I'll say, data warehouse fashion, if we're going to do a visualization, then you're going to have to build a little supporting information around it. We needed dates. This file had a month and day of month. I happen to know it's all 2014 data. It's actually 2013. The label is 2014. So I added columns and built a date from my month, day, and the year column. I also created a key so I can join this file to other data based on the state and city. More simple DAX, DAX formulas, pretty versatile. What this will do. So I also added a couple of measures to this. So what I know I'm going to need in here, I'm going to want to know what the count of total events are. When I get over to start slicing and such, I will want to take some count by divided by something, or show the total count and show percentage. And so here I created a measure, so a calculated measure. So event count is just a count of year. I'm counting this really just a count of rows. Here I'm calculating the sum of the late count. And here I'm just taking those two measures then, and I'm dividing them and multiplying, so I get something that looks like a percentage. So in addition, well, I kind of like to know, what these city names are, where they are. I might need their geolocations, because I'll probably want to map this. So I jumped out and grabbed another data set, pulled it in, did a little cleanup, went through this sequence to actually dedupe in that it was originally built with zip codes in it, so I had duplicates for cities based on zip code, but I needed it to be unique. Anyway, through Power Query, you can do just about anything, almost anything you can do in SSIS, a lot of transformation capabilities, so it's really, really quite powerful. Every good presentation needs dates. I was pretty sure I'd want to display some sort of timeline, and I'd want to be able to slice and filter by date. So I brought a date dimension in. Just again, more stuff I grabbed off the internet, brought in, did a little bit of cleanup. I don't think I did anything special in here at all. No, I did not. So let's go take a look at where this went. So with that information, I created a pivot table, and here's my chart. Here's all my pivot fields. I presume that everybody's worked with this some, so I'm not going to take a lot of time to explain it. So all I've done here is I said, well, I want to see the carrier on my x-axis, I want to see the percent on my y-axis, and then I added a timeline to this, so I can say, well, what period do I want to look at? Do I look at particular days? Do I want to look at this is only October data, by the way. So do I want to look at single days? Just an easy way to visualize what's going on, and select a range so you can see what happened and make it easy. Again, this is all self-service, called self-service for a reason. It's there to make it easy for you to build yourself, easy for you to work your way into a visualization that somebody else would understand, possibly help you understand it as well. Obviously, here, what we would glean from this is that whoever MQ is has a pretty poor percentage of late flights in October. So what we don't know, and this is where more of the visualization and augmentation comes in as well, is it related to that carrier? Is it related to where that carrier flies? What else can we look at to actually explain this data a little better, to explain the anomaly? Are these guys really that bad? So from there, I decided I'd take a look and see, let's go, well, next step up from there is actually to go to a Power View interface. Let's build a little dashboard. What do we use that? Hold on 1 second here. Yeah, I can't get back there. Sorry, a little flustered here. Here's my queries. Sorry, I've got stuff all over the place. Way too many things open. Why don't I even see Power View here? So enter chart, Power Query, Power View. Should have already been open. So anyway, once we let's go up a notch. So Power Pivot and Power Charts, it'll let you see charts and whatever. Obviously, you can change those into whatever you want. You can add multiples. You can do your slicing and dicing there. Power View gives you a little more latitude as far as building out a dashboard, and it's really about as easy as clicking somewhere out here and saying, well, I want let's take our cities and let's take our dates. Let's take our dates and let's add a measure in here so we actually get to see something. And we'll come in here and grab our on-time late. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. Doesn't look like a whole lot, but let's change this to some other kind of chart and see what we get with a line chart. So here we can see for any particular date, we can see what how the carriers did. We can, again, it's as easy as dragging this stuff in and clicking somewhere in the background and saying, okay, let's just add our data. But what we don't have in here is the ability to, again, this is self-service BI. We can't modify some of the the actual chart titles, so it's a little obnoxious from that standpoint. But again, it's self-service BI, and it lets you put something together pretty quickly that that otherwise would be difficult to do. So let's just grab the carrier here just to demonstrate a little more of this. Let's grab our carrier and our late percent. And let's change this to another chart. Okay, so that starts to make a little more sense. So who's a little easier to see, who's having problems and who's not. Maybe a little less. I should probably pivot these around so we have the dates versus. Switch that real quick. Let's put the carrier, our legend, and let's put our dates in our axis here. There we go. That'll probably make a little more sense. So now we have, again, might make a little more. What did I grab from my measure? Oh, it's the sum of their late flights, not percentage. So some pretty big numbers there. Obviously, the our date around the 17th or so of October is probably that's a bad day for somebody. Anyway, bottom line here is we can, as easy as you can click out here in an available space, you can pull in, build anything you want. We can build this by destination city, where it's going from, where it's going to, and times in between. So it's really quite easy in Power View to build out a reasonably nice looking dashboard and do it very quickly. Like I said, however, this is about the only modification you get, relative to changing these, changing your chart and your graphics titles. They always show what you've selected, and so it's a little bit funky there. I'm hoping they will change that sometime in the not too distant future. But that's what they're doing now, so it's a pretty good step forward. Again, it's not SSRS or performance point where you can make everything as pretty as you want, tie everything into everything, but it's not nearly as brain damaging as that either. And if you wanted to, so I just did here, if you wanted to whip something out, in an afternoon, it will take you more time to put your data together probably than it will to actually build out your presentation. So, if there's anything over here, okay. Next up from that, we have another interesting product. So Power View, I'm sorry, Power Map. So what I'm getting at here, when you in your mining, you're going to have some output, and you're going to have relationships to inputs that, in theory, should have been considered in the mining itself. Like in our model, I did not in that case add weather in, which I could have if I had included weather data into the model. It would have used that and probably would have been logically, well, we're flying in the air, weather's always a problem. So I would expect that weather variables would have had a pretty strong influence over good days and bad days for the airline. So what I've done here is I have fired up PowerView. So here, Power Map. From your Insert tab, Map, Start. I don't really want to click on it. I've already got one up. But anyway, I've told it to fire up Power Map. And when I got to that, I went, okay. It comes up and it's blank and looks pretty much like this. It will ask you to choose your geography. So how does it identify? How does it align your data with a map? You probably know that this goes out to Bing using whatever you've given it, city, state, zip code, latitude, longitude. It'll use pretty much anything, and we'll bring back we'll map itself into the display here. So all this has done is this is flights. These are the cities, and the count of flights is what what's mapped on this. So I chose to display this as a heat map. So I also then went, well, okay, I'd like to see what our flights actually look like. So delay count. So again, I went back and said I wanted to pick on our actual flights. So I'm looking at on time late, the measure I built, and told it the same. You don't have to use the same city state, but you can map it in any way you want, so we can align it. And what it came up with is something that looks like this. Well, okay, that's kind of interesting looking. And usually, I'm not big on maps. I mean, well, they're pretty, but they don't really tell too much of a story. But out of the 30,000 flights, and all of these locations, so every dot you see on here is a city that a plane took off or landed from. These are the ones that seem to have the problem. Others are so small that they just don't count. So you can see that distribution, major cities, it looks like they would have more problems than others. So kind of understandable based on volume. That's something I don't have in here is total volume for the airport. As a good data scientist, I would have to shame myself here because percentage of on time late out of total flights. These are the total recorded flights, not necessarily all the flights. So anyway, we have since we have time involved in our flight, I can add and did add a player to this, so you can see how during a period of time our counts accumulate. It's kind of in a lot of cases this really backs up what you probably already know. Up around the Great Lakes, they have a lot of terrific weather. This is again October. Things get pretty ugly up there. They get their lake winds or their lake effect, whatever, and they get a ton of snow out of there. So they're going crazy more than anybody. But that's a supposition on my part. It's not not proven by anything so far. So you can see how we how the late flights accumulate If I'd done this a little differently, I would have been able to see by day, the count of flights, so we could actually see things move up and down as opposed to a summary. Threw this together pretty quickly, so the little point here was, okay, in this case, it actually makes sense. You can intuitively, and I caution you on intuition, I'll talk about that in a second. Intuitively, you would say, well, okay, these are the busiest airports in the country. Kind of surprising. Well, Salt Lake City, okay, I used to grew up in Colorado, lived in Wyoming for a number of years, spent a lot of time in Salt Lake City. Happen to know they get a tremendous amount of snow there, so and things start to turn ugly there, so I'm pretty familiar with that weather. I lived in Seattle. I know it gets ugly there as well. Now I'm down here in Jacksonville now. Why would we be late in October? That's where Pragmatic Works is located, or that's our corporate office, also where I'm at. So it's a little surprising that we're that late here. Anyway, it starts to put a picture together that if you were to show this to somebody and said, hey, I've got out of all of these cities, this is the data we have and this is what it looks like, it starts to actually, reinforce suppositions and maybe make something a little less than a supposition out of them. What I haven't done yet, and I hope I don't screw this whole thing up, trying to do this, I do also have, well, okay, let's get into this a little ways, and then let's see about throwing some weather data at it. So I pulled in some wind data, and there's a good chance I'll totally hose this for you. Let's see how it goes. So geography, how am I going to map this out of my wind? Let's see if it will use latitude and longitude. Okay, it's picked this up here. It knows that's what they are. So we'll hit next. And then we'll come back here and let's go with where's our speed. Add speed data to it. See what we get. By adding another heat map layer to it. I don't want summit speed. I want stick average. All right. It's either not mapped it or it's not liking me. Okay, let's go back to my we have all the data here. So let's say wind should be there, should be happy. If I go to my pivot, it's also there, right? Right, it's not helping me out here. Decided not to include this, and I think it's because It has me, come on. Wow, I'm totally stuck here. So there's this table. I don't think I have to hook it up to anything in that data mod diagram. I don't think it's going to, because I don't have a single key in here. I'll take a key then. I should be able to pull it in as unrelated data. I don't see that Power Map should care. Latitude, longitude, yes. It should be busy mapping it, but it's not. That's why. Jeez, are you kidding me? Okay, so back to wind. So we do have wind. Apparently we have a whole lot of wind. There we go. So, like a little bit of an idiot here. I had the layer turned off so you couldn't see it. So here we've added wind. So that explains a little more. It looks like this is probably Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix, it gets really windy. Salt Lake kind of the same. Everybody's heard about the infamous winds in Chicago. So now we're starting to explain this a little more as to, there's definitely a correlation between, it looks like there's a correlation between the heavier wind zones and our flight delays. So there don't seem to be very little, well, that's not true. This is just wind. I'm going to guess that this is rain. And who knows what's going on out here. I'll actually blaze through this kind of fast. Do I have questions? Anything anybody wants to discuss? We lost Liz. I can't see the chat window.
No, I'm here. Sorry about that. I was working on something.
Sorry. Didn't surprise you.
That's okay. Did you work on DB2 using Power Query?
So I work on DB2 using Power Query. I mean, can I?
It says, did you?
No.
Okay. My Excel doesn't show Power Map. I have Office 2013 on premise. How do I get Power Map?
You have to actually, there's a download for that. It's another plugin. So you'll have to go just Google Excel Power Map plugin, and in your just fire up a new window here. In your options, if you look at add-ins, you should see we'll have Power Map in here. So once you have to go out, download the plugin, and run it, and it should show up in here enabled. If not, if you go to, I believe it's in the COM add-ins. Yes. So if it's not showing up enabled there, then you can come in here and add it in. questions?
Yep. Where can you find the weather information?
I just I've been messing with data science stuff for months. But this data came from, I believe it was off of NOAA's site, or National Weather Service. If we just Google it should take us, if you haven't looked for data out on the internet, it's crazy what is out there. So if you hit our satellite climate forecast observations download. So information, shape files. I think I actually Googled best So again, pretty much anything you want, you can come out here and grab any of these. Depends on what you're looking for. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of data sets available. Some of it's not so current. Some of it is. This flight data, you can get it within a couple months, but a lot of it's not terribly current. If you want it really current, you may actually have to go scrape somebody's website yourself. More questions?
Okay. Can these features be tried for free?
Yes. There is nothing here other than, actually even, no, there's a little bit of a charge on the Azure machine learning side, as you might expect. It's mostly free. Your environment can sit there. Your storage can sit there. If you're not moving anything around, you're okay, but when you process something in your machine learning workspace or you start moving data around between them, then you get charged for it. But everything else is free. There's no charges involved in anything I did here. More questions?
Nope, those are all. Oh, here's one. I have Excel 2010. Would I be able to use Power Features with Office 2010?
Not all of them. So Power View, I believe, yes. Power Map, no. That's a 2013 feature only. Power Query and Power Pivot, yes. So you get most of them. You don't. Yeah, they're pushing everybody into. They're working hard to get everybody to upgrade these days. I used to work there, so I can talk like that. So I paid my dues. More questions?
Nope, those are the only ones so far.
We have 20 minutes. Is there anything anybody wants to see? You want to see me blow things up or something? I didn't mean to get through that in quite such a hurry. I'm a little anxious today, I guess.
We'll give everybody just a few minutes if they want to submit some questions or whatnot.
I'll put some things back out there. So you can here also, you can create a video, screen capture, save this off. Most of this can be embedded in SharePoint. There's a number of ways to host it. Again, if this was done a little differently, we could play this, and we would see things pop up. We'd see our dates. Probably, I'm sure I could put a window in here that would show me that. Well, here's your dates there. So we can see the dates as they go by, and you can see the weather patterns change. And if you really wanted to get crazy with it and really try to explain what's going on. Again, this is a pretty visualization, but it's really all about explaining what you're finding in your data. This could come from some fairly simple reporting. However, as far as the predictions and such, obviously out of some sort of machine learning, some sort of algorithm, some sort of prediction. Which, by the way, if you don't, oops, sorry.
That's okay. We have some more questions whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right.
Can you show again how you export the data from ML into something that Power Query can connect to, and show how you connect using Power Query?
Sure. So over in Azure land, what I had, I'm going to leave that one because it's got some, well, not sure. So over here, I went, okay, I want this data out of here. It's stuck there. I can't get to it. You do have the option over here. You can download it, but again, it outputs it as a file called it's got a proprietary. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, so if you're not familiar with this, I've mentioned this before in my other videos as well, or my other webinars as well. There are other ways to hook up and see graphical interfaces to connect to the Azure blob storage. I happen to like this Cloudberry Explorer. It makes it look like everything's in folders or organized in folders. So this is my that's my storage container, and within that I have everything I've done. I pushed into this output tag. It's not really a folder. It's just made to look like it here. But what I wound up with in here is this is what, if I download it, this is what I get. And it comes with this data set extension, and if you look at it, it's not terribly friendly. It doesn't look like it means much of anything. So it doesn't look like something you could open up. So to actually download it, I don't know what good it would do for sure. So instead, in here in our objects, I went to data input and output, so you can read data in as well, obviously, and hook this up. And now I have to tell it where to go. So my Azure account name, let's go back to my storage. I believe I have it over here. So what you have is access keys. So account name, I'm going to copy this. We'll paste that in here as my account. We'll go back here and we'll copy our access key. So again, without this, you can't connect. That's all there is to it. So we will add that as the account key. And then I'm going to, it begins with a container name. So I happen to know that my storage container is I heard big data, CNT for container 01. So we'll go back over here, HBDCT01, and then I'm going to give it this state path. So I'm going to tell it I wanted an output in this container, and then I'm going to want to put it in FD flight delay. So I'm going to tell it to overwrite whatever's there. I do indeed want a CSV file, and I do want it to write headers. And so then we just go run. And it'll take it a minute or so. While it's doing that, let me jump over here to my this new workbook I've opened. And we'll fire up Power Query, and we'll tell it we want it from other sources, and we'll go down to Azure Blob Storage. Then you'll start to see the same same sort of questions, same sort of inputs here. So it's going to be a little painful. So I flip back and forth to get to these keys again. So center one, keys, start to count. At least give you a nice button here to deal with that. So that's my storage account, or URL, sorry. Let's go back here. Let's close this, let's go to the container. So here's my URL. This is what I really want. Okay. Okay, I guess I'll just give it, you know what, it may not have the, the 23, the only thing it can be is, all right, let's see if it flies. Storage. Back up a notch so I get to my keys. There we go. I think it's going to fail. So I have a couple options here. Account key. One name could not be .blob.windows.net. Well, that is probably true. Okay, definitely having a little fun here. Sample one.
Do you want to take some more questions while you're working on this, Mike?
Sure.
Okay. How big is your Excel file?
It's actually pretty tiny. The deal is it is all it's 3 megs, almost 4 megs is all. This guy right here. I take that back. I mean this one. So 6 megs. It's very small. It's all. This is all based on you know, a tabular model. So it's you know, compression is pretty phenomenal. You know, if you have looked at the X velocity engine, the compression rates are you know, it's something in the range of a factor of 10. So it's really quite amazing. So
I've run into issues sharing Power Map visualizations with users not on Office 2013. Any suggestions?
No, there's really not a way around that. You know, unless you can host it, you know, someplace like SharePoint, where the SharePoint services take care of that, but otherwise they really have to have Office 2013. It's not going to fly.
Can you write a query directly in Azure, or is Power Query the only way?
I'm not totally sure which kind of, there we go. Not totally sure which, so Azure is a big space. So are you talking about, could you give us a little more information on what kind of query? What are you trying to query? I guess is my question.
What type of Azure account are you currently using?
I'm using a pay-as-you-go account. And for what it's worth and the messing around I do, I'm pretty religious about shutting things down. Like if you spin up an HDN site cluster, you want it shut down. You do not want to leave that up because as long as it's running, whether it's processing or not, you're being charged for it every core. And I have the smallest server possible, so that it's still 16 cores, so I'm being charged for 16 hours of runtime every time, for every hour that one HDN site cluster is up, that single node cluster is up. So it could get fairly expensive, but again, I shut it down. I have, if you want to mess around with that stuff, if you go out to my website, I have scripts out there, PowerShell scripts that you can deal with all this remotely. And you can start things up, shut them down. You can obviously run your PowerShell script, so set it up, which is what I've done. So every night, regardless, it always goes out and shuts down all my HDN site clusters to make sure they're not running. I spend anywhere from $20 to $100 a month playing around with it. So we managed to connect. So let's see what our tables are. We got to find our let's go for our output. Open file as great. All right, still giving me a hard time. That's 90% of it. I don't know if I have time to wrap it or finish. Well, maybe. More questions? Well,
Sure. Let's see. Is it now possible to publish XLS in a Power BI site and schedule auto refresh?
In a Power BI site, do you mean SharePoint site? Yes. Other than SharePoint, there's no Microsoft tool to do that. However, there are, I've implemented scripts that will do that for you. Again, that's just another Google search to look for the scripts. It was a little bit of a configuration issue, but I do have Power Pivot workbooks that are set to auto refresh without SharePoint.
Okay. What things you have to take care of for pay-as-you-go so that you wouldn't pay a lot to do, so you wouldn't have to pay a lot? Do you have, oh, and people want you to show your blog as well.
Okay. So we'll be there a second momentarily. So to keep from paying a lot, it really amounts to shutting things down. It's important that, in particular, so presentations, I have most of my websites or my webinars out here in the tutorials. If you want to start playing with working with Hadoop and start learning Hive and Pig and that sort of thing, I highly recommend the Hortonworks Sandbox. Hortonworks, their distribution is what Microsoft's HD Insight is based on, so they're quite similar. But this thing will, out here I have step-by-step instructions on how to load where to get the virtual machine software, how to download the file, how to configure it, fire everything up, and how to log into the sandbox and start using it. Tons of tutorials, so if you want to learn, start playing with Hadoop and understand that side of it, this is a great place to go. As far as Azure, the big deals with Azure are oh, here, I'll just show you. So the big deal is to keep things shut down. So if you do that, you will not have, you will not incur giant subscriptions. If you haven't looked at it before, so so far doing pretty well for the month, and in 10 days, so kept it pretty reasonable. But this is how so I've been billed ever so slightly for a third of a gig of data transfer. The big deal here was compute hours and when I had a cluster up and running, and that gets a little expensive, but not bad. So, but here you can see 203 hours. You go, how on earth, did I rack up 203 hours? That's because I had a cluster up and running with 16 cores for some period of time. So it's critical. If you left this running, if you left an HD Insight cluster running for a month, you would hate yourself. Your bank account would hate you too. Moving data around, be sure about what you need to move. Keep everything as small as possible. Really, nothing different than any environment that depends on the network. Be cautious and judicious about what you do, but as long as your data sits static, it's almost free. It's close to it. No questions? If you haven't signed up for Azure, you can sign up for a trial account, and I've tried to get around this to get another trial account, and it's not even. It hasn't been possible. We put it that way. They're not dummies there. But anyway, you get a $200 credit, and it's good for 30 days. So if you're going to sign up for it, if you're going to mess with it, wait till you're ready to do something with it, and then sign up and use it all. But once the $200 is gone, anything over that you incur in charges, they're going to bill you for. They will take a credit card right up front. So being a little careful, we'll keep it pretty cheap. Like I said, I think my worst month was $85 or something like that. But I kind of lay my work out, prep my data, and then fire it up and start moving stuff around and running experiments, that sort of thing. More questions?
We are actually out of time, so if that's okay, we can send you the questions that didn't get answered. Maybe do a follow-up blog. Okay.
All right. Yeah, look for them out on my website. I have a blog up there. It's iHeartBigData.com.
Okay. Great.
And thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I hope there's something interesting in here.